the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
Okay, so one. First roll call, we have 4 of the 5 trustees here in person, and the 5th trustee still by video. So all 5 of us are present. Plus, we have both Riley and Ava, our student representatives. Okay. May I have a motion to approve the meeting agenda?
I move that we approve the agenda as written.
Second. Okay, Sanjay moves, and Deanna seconds the approval of the agenda. Riley, may I have your? Ava, I'm sorry. I approve. All right, board.
Aye.
All approved? Oh, I mean, all in favor?
Aye.
Aye, still. So that's okay. That's a 5-0 plus both of our student reps. Okay, there was no action taken in closed session, so we can move on past 8.1 and 8.2 and go to 9.1, which is the resolution on National African American History Month. Superintendent, would you like to speak on that?
Yes, thank you. Thank you very much. February has been designated as African American History Month, and the Mountain View Los Altos High School District recognizes the contributions of Black Americans and Americans of African descent to develop our nation and encourages all schools to commemorate this occasion with appropriate instructional material. And with that, I have the resolution. If you would like me to read that.
Yes, that would be good.
All right, thank you. Whereas American history testifies and reflects upon the challenges and struggles against which Black and African American people fought with determination, perseverance, and cultural pride to gain access to equal opportunities as provided by our nation's principles of life, liberty, and the pursuit of happiness. And whereas Black and African American men and women have participated in every American's responsibility to protect the United States Constitution and advance the cause of freedom and civil rights. And whereas even after the 13th Amendment abolishing slavery in 1865 and the 14th Amendment granting citizenship and equal rights to African Americans enslaved in 1858, Black and African Americans continue to experience and overcome racism and discrimination to this day. And whereas the civil rights movement and a growing awareness of Black identity, National African American History Month evolved to an annual celebration of achievements by Black Americans and a time for recognizing the central role of Black and African Americans in U.S. history. And whereas the contributions of Black and African Americans from all walks of life and their endeavors to learn and thrive throughout history and made unforgettable contributions in our nation as scientists, educators, business people, influential thinkers, political and governmental leaders, members of the faith community, community activists, artists, and athletes reflects the
Yes, the resolution. Okay, good. Chad, are you back?
Hang on.
Okay, good. So then
I can't hear you again. I don't know if you can hear me. Hi, Debbie.
hey, Phil.
That's fine. Okay, thank you. I am. Aye. No, no.
several student speakers and also guest speakers. And about 110 students attended, and they're all spread out in the theater. It was an all-day event. They were able to, speak to the students.
You still have sound now. So now we lost all the
No, we're getting there. All right, we're switching.
Okay.
Yes. I'm sorry, what was the question? Yes, I can hear. Thank you.
community members at large. It will also include other representatives such as Mvla and PCSA and other organizations. We wanted it in special education. We wanted to make sure we had a very diverse group. You have a comment?
Yeah, I guess, is those two parents, full adult and young elder, they will not put high schools? Are they both?
So, Nikki Selden was also high school and John Cantor is not high school.
I don't think so.
And then Gwen Byard, I believe, is Los Altos, I can double check. But we were cognizant, if I read between the lines of your question.
I thought John was also involved. Yeah, but no.
Thank you for asking, because that's an important thing that we're looking at. And then, I can't read the bottom there, but I believe that what it's saying is that, health conditions, et cetera, but we are planning for January 31st. Okay, and with that, I love this picture. Underneath them, it says thank you. You can't quite read it, but the students in action, they like as I mentioned, they're happy to be back. They're great. They really stepped right in and continue to wear their mask and keep each other safe. And that concludes my superintendent report. Thank you, Dr. Mother. Moving on to 13.1, district organization. I'm happy for the for each of the recognized district organizations, PSBA and EPA. May give a brief update. Do we have either of those people here? No, not at this time. Thank you. Right, next is public comment on an item not on the agenda. And here's the situation here is that although a couple of people emailed us and declared their items on non-agenda items, they actually were on COVID. And that is a report and discussion during the actual agenda. That's another item on the agenda. So we will consider comments about those comments when we get to that agenda. Is there any people that choose to comment that are here tonight on non-agenda items? No, these are all for 17.2. So we'll move on to the consolidated motion. Is there any questions or any items that need to be pulled?
I like the full three,
Okay. Anybody else have something? Otherwise, I would like to clarify this on eight. And depending on the clarification, I will try to pull it or not. If we approve that item for that amount, but the budget that we was calculated on turns out to be less because we are hoping to make it maybe after our year, be able to reduce the budget. That would mean this price can go down and they would refund the money later. That's how it works. Yeah.
You want to first go ahead and improve everything except the full load?
I didn't know if I wanted to pull that, that's the point.
Oh, that's great.
And let's clarify the question before I decide to order.
Yeah, the current contract amount is based upon that graduated scale fee based upon a current estimated construction cost of 13.5 million. But they actually bill us when they bill us based upon the actual cost. So if the actual construction cost is less, then they charge us based upon the actual construction cost. So they would not utilize the full amount of that contract. So rather than
I know that. I understand that. So I don't want to pull that one.
4 and 5.
Seconds only.
Reflect the Sunday. Do you approve the remainder consolidated motion? That's what we're voting on.
Yes.
Okay, great. That's a 5-0 vote. And the teacher. Could you remind me that Debbie's not there, to take the minutes, who made the motion and who seconded? Okay, Fiona and. Oh, Debbie, okay. And she's listening, so. Oh, okay, she is listening, good. All right. So now we have 16. Hold on, I know that's what I'm saying, that's what 16 is. 16 is items pulled from the consolidated motion. So we now have 16.3. Do we number them the same, or do we have to change the number? Okay, we're going to call 15.3, now 15.3, and
Yeah, so on the, just wanted to get, I think I sent the email, basically, the floor boxes, exactly what that is, like, what, what are either gonna be outlets, throwing the room, floors and all that. Under each desk, and $20,000 for that, and that's only for the thing. Only, I guess I want to understand what exactly is that my floor box, but understanding what that is. The 120,000 seems a lot of it floor boxes, but that's why I'm trying to talk about this part of it, or make it not the, and then what would we understand the full box?
Yeah, and before I answer, I know we're having some audio troubles for those viewing on YouTube. It seems that when this microphone closest to me is on, people are picking up sound. I'm not sure. I don't know, Phil, if it's any better now that I'm talking in this one or not. We might have you all press and hold and turn off your microphones and then turn them on as it's you need to speak. Just press and hold and the light should go off. It's because they're plugged in, huh? Yeah. It's all right. I'm using this opportunity to answer clarifying questions just to address audio issues. Let's just unplug them and we'll see how they go. And then we do thank, if you can hear me out there in the YouTube universe, we are getting lots of comments advising us, so thank you. And we have one other option if we need to not use the microphones and just pick up the microphone on the camera. All right. Wow. I don't know that beautifully me have ever been put together, but at least the words. All right. If we need to, we can just pass the microphone I'm using. But maybe now that we've unplugged them, maybe that will have some more success when you need to speak. All right, so getting back to that item regarding the floor block boxes, outlets. So I want to clarify, and I know those online, it's hard to see that. What we're talking about is a box more similar to the box that's near the podium in this room, not the actual gold plated outlet, which is just, a floor plug, which are a maintenance nightmare, and we don't want to have those. So there are, I don't know the exact number. This is in multiple freestyle rooms in the new freestyle building. It's about 4 per room in 4 classrooms, so on the order of 16-ish, excluding the English classroom. And so it is the actual box underneath and the electrical hookups and conduit to get power to the middle of the classroom. So this was in response to furniture design layout of the student desks and where the teachers wanted it. The original design had them just in the wall only, and with the design of having the desk next to the wall. And that was not favored by the teachers and the setup they want for freestyle and how they move about the room. And so this was offered as a request. To answer the question about the total cost, it's probably on the order, when you look at all the things involved, closer to 80,000 to put those outlets in the floor in the various rooms.
Underneath that are the outlets.
Are the outlets and network connections for Ethernet cables. Yep,
Basically underneath the cable.
correct. So rather than come off the wall with cords hanging out and trip hazards, even with the cord covers, they don't stay down in our experience.
A lot of money. A lot of money for that. I guess, this kind of goes to another question I have regarding, we see so many of these things, every meeting,
Correct.
every board meeting, multiple change orders. And these amounts are standard, they're all part of the budget, get all that, but still, nonetheless, they add up, these are all, and the big things, we go over about a month for that, but I noticed there's more to it than just the material cost. There's the cost of part of the equipment. So I guess, I like this. Everything on the kind of cost. We're doing, then I don't know whether it's worth paying this money just to do this as opposed to maybe some other projects down the road. So I guess to me, I just $80,000, it seems like too much money just for that convenience.
So it comes out to about 4,000 a box then, because we've got 21 box, I guess technically 22 boxes for 80,000 fully installed. So you're telling us that the 20K is not all the ancillary stuff, it's just the box.
Correct. Yeah, I can refer to the page you guys are all looking at if you give me a moment. But I do know this change order is just for the initial part, the conduit, because there's a timing of this, right? We're laying the concrete, the foundation, so you got to do this.
Yeah, that was
I
my
mean, they're
next
already out
question is,
there.
are we having to undo something that's already been done, right? Or are we having to
Yeah,
cut
the
a track in
boxes,
the concrete?
the
at
boxes
this
are
point?
already, if you look out the window behind the district office, right, you can see the conduit coming out in the positions of the boxes
At the wall.
that are ready to go once they start, pouring the foundation and doing the flooring and whatnot.
Right, so part of, I'm just understanding,
Yep.
part of the cost is that we're undoing something that's already been done.
Oh, no, I'm sorry. I'm saying this change order, right, which, to go through the process, right, a lot of these change orders are already done in the field and decided on, and this is really, for ratification purposes at the board level, because technically we are adjusting the contract with the contractor. So my clarification was the boxes actually have been placed with the conduit in their location where they're going to be.
Oh, in the middle of the
In the
room.
floor.
Okay. Got it. Okay. So is there an additional change order coming for the 60,000 then? Because you just said that the total was.
Yeah, well,
like
because the
80.
question was, this is, I think, just for the physical boxes and the conduit to get there. And so, yeah, there will be an additional cost, coming. We don't have those exact numbers yet, but as often we talk about it, like here's what the additional cost might be. When you throw everything in after the end, we throw a number at it. The number amongst the larger design team and construction management team was around 80K.
So I guess, if you think about whether this is really a high priority, it's something that they really, really need to have. If they don't have it, how much of a.
Yeah,
I guess that's the question of, in terms of, priority wise, how much of a priority it is, how much of it more of this is a wish
sure.
to have, right? Because from our discussion about the overall budget for the construction, we're getting to a point where we're having to make some tough decisions. And I want to be cognizant of that. So we maybe just need to start looking at some of these additional costs that we're putting in, that maybe it's, at this point, it's not, some of these that we, are nice to haves, but, maybe it's not something we need. I guess that's something I just want us to, to me, I think it's something we need to start being cognizant of.
Certainly. I mean, as just a point of example, right, that will never see the light of day in a board meeting or anything like that because it was said no to before it even got to plans, right? But Bob and I were in a meeting with the design team and their consultants reviewing a lot of the IT and audiovisual requests from, Freestyle. And there was an example of requests. I mean, the designs have already been approved by DSA, mind you. Each room, their larger rooms have 2 doors due to requirements because of size and exit and safety issues. So there's a light switch by the door, which is where you normally have, right? There was a request by the teachers, well, can we add a light switch near the teacher workstation, right? Which is reasonable and it's convenient. And yet at this point would result of additional costs just to have that convenience. And we made a decision no, to not go with it as much as it'd be nice to have, but there's already 2 switches in the door and it's consistent with where light switches are. And so it seems like a little thing, but it's the cost to pull the wires and run it and have the other outlet. And these aren't just on-off switches, they're dimmer switches. There's no more cost to it. So I share that just, I want you guys to know that we do scrutinize it and look at it and say no to things. And certainly with projects that have a tighter budget, I'm trying to scrutinize it more.
Convert those into remote switches so that they can put they can have a remote, right? I mean, that's what a lot of, that's what we have today, right?
Sure.
It's on your phone, you can, have an app that controls the lights.
So staying
but-
on this one just for
yeah.
a sec, I think I read in your weekly that part of the concern on this one was that they were gonna do it regardless. And then we ended up with a trip hazard on the floor in perpetuity in our brand new building. And what did that look like? So I believe that was in your write-up.
Yeah,
right?
I read that, in the weekly. So I guess, but I mean, is it, to me, it's very common to put, the tape on there when the wires are there and just like on a fire strip so people don't do it. I mean, that's what people have today. And it hasn't really been an issue all these years as far as I know, or has it? Or has that been a major issue?
But now we have rolling furniture.
Well, we've had it for years, rolling furniture.
Every year we have an inspection by the fire marshal who comes through and points out all of our hazards. And every year, a lot of those wires and cables are improperly placed or pointed out as hazards, and we have to go through and clean it up. And somehow they find their way back into the classrooms, right? And we're nitpicking on the small thing, but sometimes they curl or they don't lay flat, or they're in a place that's an accessibility issue, right? Depending on the room. So I mean, trust me, that was my initial desire of like, hey, just put the desk next to the wall and walk a different route, right? But understanding some of this is the unique nature of the program for which they're building this building and how they cluster students and their work tables. Part of it was listening to similar feedback in the general classrooms where there are only wall outlets. And one of the first comments we got from teachers was, where's the power? Students with their Chromebooks, where they plug in. That's more of a temporary power in nature. So having a temporary strip seemed more of a reasonable solution. Is that, the Freestyle are often dedicated, hardwired, network wired, connected to power full time. They're not just using, battery operated Chromebooks for most of their devices. So it was a little different setup and environment. So we understand it's, not an insignificant cost to add that and might become the, hey, that's the one thing kind of extra you got, and the rest has to be as is and as original, design and plan.
Could we put half the number of, would it make sense, or that wouldn't make sense at all?
I didn't know, without showing you a diagram of the physical layout, but no, it's all based upon, literally, we mapped out, here's where the desks are going, and they're placed where the teachers plan to put their desks based upon their individual, like the film studio versus the design studio versus the web and animation rooms.
I had a comment on that. And that is, Sanjay, I understand, I don't like it to be, slice a little bit more pieces of money off all the time to add another change order for this and that, and add on things like this. However, I'm more concerned about the bigger ones. This, even though this seems like a lot of money, 20 to 80, that's why I had that clarifying question on the other one, but then I wasn't worried because that's $750,000. However, that's a formula based on the cost of the whole project. And when we get the architectural drafts and review whether we're going to do certain features in though a huge $13 million project, we have opportunities to save tens of thousands of dollars at once compared to, or hundreds of thousands even of dollars at once compared to 20 to 80 here. So, it's a trade-off, like you said, what you keep and what you don't. But on the other hand, monetarily, what can make everybody happy and be way more convenient and fire safe for not too much money compared to someplace you can save really a lot more money all at once.
Just a couple of comments. So on one is, this is the cost we're going to be paying for sure. Right?
Mhm.
This is what it's saying. That's what the exchange order is about. What you're referring to in 15.8, that's basically a formula that they use, and that's basically, and their percentage of RGM Kramer's cost or fees, I should say, is based on the cost of a project. Now, if you think this cost of this project is going to be less than what what the ultimate that bill is going to be, it's not. I mean, we're already seeing costs are going up dramatically, mainly because of COVID, supply chain, material costs, they're all going up. And so I don't think, I mean, you're wishing things will either be reduced, so you'll end up paying less. That, I don't think I personally don't think that's going to happen. That's one, and that's assuming, you're assuming that it may happen, it may not, we don't know. That's something we just don't know about. This is a cost we know about, that this is what we will be paying. So I think that to me, that's a major distinction from what you're saying and from what this is. So, that's just my 2 cents on that.
So is there a point of order? Do we take each of these in separately?
You may also vote for them as a block, but typically we have taken them separately.
All right, we'll take this one separately. Is there any more comments on this one? And are you? Okay, there's no more comments on this one?
So I guess I'd like to see, is there more analysis that makes sense to be done on this to see if we can either reduce the cost, or is there anything else that makes sense at this point, or you think?
So unfortunately,
this is something you think we need to do?
Yeah, I mean, my recommendation is we do it, and we've already given the work directive in the field to, go ahead and do this. So given the individual dollar amounts of these, by the time we're seeing it here, are already done. Like some of these are on the classroom project that we've been using for, 3 or 4 months. So a lot of this is contract cleanup and, adding these costs up. Like you see a big fat $550,000 credit, which was on a prior change order for Best Electric, I think, for one of the other ones that was pulled. So many of these items
we've already ordered everything for this. Is already, you're saying when this is, so everything's been ordered.
So the 20,000, right? So I'll say this, the 20,000 as indicated here, right, is we did this part of the change order early because of the lead time of the items to make sure we could get them, right? So we separated out. We could not do any more of it, save the remainder amount of costs, and just, put the floor over it, and nobody ever know they're there unless they ever went into a crawl space, if there is a crawl space, right, and save the delta. The remainder amount. I mean, that's the opportunity we have at this point in time.
The question is, if these were to come to us before, is there a way that in the future we get more of a timely review of contracts before we have to decide whether we're moving forward? I mean, we know that this is actually a thing that they asked for. I really appreciate it. I'm just questioning whether or not we can get change orders.
Yeah, let me talk with the team about how to do that in an expeditious manner, right? That the challenge with any construction thing is time and delays. And so the things that have served this district well, even predating me, was an ability to make good, wise decisions, but timely decisions to keep the project going. And what can kill lots of projects, and you might say 40,000 here, but you spend 10x that over there because the delays on the project is slowing down the process and decision making, and sometimes the decisions need to be made in the field, right? So I want to figure out what's kind of the expedient way to do that, right? Maybe there's a way to use the facilities committee, maybe there's a way to, pull that into the weekly meetings I have with the construction management and design team. For the larger items like we did with the lime treatment, which is 300,000, that was something that came to the board, given the significant dollar amount with the pros and cons of doing that and the risk of waiting, right? So definitely ones of higher dollar value that is going to push us over that, individual contract or contingency amount we do bring. So
Is it possible for you to send us the change order requests individually with these new comments back to know whether or not this should be something that we should wait on until we have the meeting? Just as a.
possibly, there's a challenge then with who's providing the feedback, right? And 5 board members in a non-board meeting setting and wanting to make sure we, follow all the right protocols. So.
In my hearing and what you just mentioned, Mike, about facilities meeting and your weekly construction meetings, that the message would be that ideally to the construction team, you're going to be requesting as much as possible to be put in the original bid. And so any changes, so we limit changes, put it all into the original, is that?
Well, that's always, that's always the intent, right? And yet every project that's ever been done, there's stuff that's, on these change orders that happens after the fact. So it's more and we're getting very into the details, and I apologize, but we have weekly owner, architect, contractor meetings on these job sites, and they're troubleshooting the field. Hey, this happened, or this page of the plans, which is the plumber, it wasn't reconciled with the electrician, and so there's the pipes are, not the right distance apart, right? We got to figure it out, right? We could shut down the job for 2 weeks, bring it to a board meeting and say, hey, what do you guys think we should do with the pipes? That's not the most efficient or expeditious way, right? So I think part of it's maybe a dollar threshold, that we want to more clearly identify of what maybe we, want to have more review over. It could be in my weekly meetings, right, which are not the facility subcommittee meetings of the board, maybe identifying, hey, here's the, ones that we need to check in with. Maybe it's the facilities committee meeting members. Maybe they're part of that meeting, or maybe that's how we use the facilities committee meeting time more so than other things, reviewing those. So it's this constant balance of moving the job forward with, making sure we're responsible for the budget and what's been approved in terms of a project budget. So that's the tension, the balance we always face. So, but I'm definitely hearing loud and clear the concern about containing costs and budgets. And as we get to the in the grand scheme of things, I don't want to say the tail end of Measure E, right? But it's 200 million of the 295 has already been spent or is already earmarked with the student services projects and auxiliary gym, right? It's kind of that last third or less, and that happens. All of a sudden there's less money remaining, and choices have to be made over the remaining projects and pieces of it.
Okay, I have a question. Perhaps we could also identify on these ones, because if it's already done, like you just said on this one, we could identify it, ratification of change order, or change order in parentheses ratification. That means, we basically already done it, but we technically as the board have to approve it. And that way we would know the difference between ones that are kind of fait accompli, or the ones that we have more input to. And I also like the idea of the facilities committee knowing the actual change orders in advance, if not the whole board.
Okay.
So that'd be great. Any other discussion on this particular one?
Actually, Ken, if you want me to just kind of go through those three, ask questions on those three.
No,
we
because
can
we
vote
just-
together if you want. Would
No,
would
no,
that be easier for you?
No, I'd rather
Do
stick with
individual?
the way Dr. Meyer has said we've often done it in the past. So we will go with 16.3, which was the previous 15.3. Change order 3D. Any other questions before I have a motion? Okay, a motion?
I move that we approve item 15.3, which is now item 16.3.
Okay. Any further discussion? Okay, Ava? Riley? Board, all in favor, say aye. Aye. Opposed? Okay, that's a 5-0 vote. All right, now we are to the new 16.4. Sanjay, you pulled this one, so you probably have the most to say about it.
So, yeah, I guess, I mean, it's kind of a similar thread on each of them. So on this one, it's 15,000 a piece for each high school. I guess my one question I have is that, again, these costs seem pretty high for a clock and speaker into these portables. Does the oversight committee, do they actually go through and look at a breakdown of that cost? The change order and all these, that do they look to see whether this is these costs are in line, or is that too much in the weeds for them?
So the responsibility of the Citizens Oversight Committee is more broad than that. It's really to look at, taxpayers voted and approved this bond measure, and is the district spending them in the manner in which they're supposed to be spent on said projects in those ways. So they see every payment made to, like, Atlas Pellizzari Electric, so they'll see those payments. They don't see necessarily the actual work or the change orders or things of that nature. So they don't look at like a per unit or per item cost.
So I guess the question is, I mean, is there anybody looking at that level?
Oh, yeah. I mean, so and I replied probably too late in the day to, get these answers to you before the board meeting, but, the unit for each additional clock speaker was in line. So we put in these clock speakers in every room in the campus, right? It was part of the new classroom construction. So it's digital, it's power over Ethernet. And so the old system, which was analog, which we had to demo anyway, because we were demoing the admin buildings. And instead of having two systems, we moved every room over to the new digital clock speaker system, right? So what happened here was these were portables that served as classrooms during the classroom construction project. Once we moved out of those, we were going to use them as offices. So the original plan was to put them on the exterior of those portables for safety announcements and whatnot. But in the past, when we had offices, often we got complaints about how loud the announcements were, or, they were individual offices, there wasn't a need. And for any safety announcement, they would hear it from the external speaker. So the original plan for the clock speakers was not include the portables, because we'd have to pull them out anyway when we eventually return the portables, because you got to return them in the condition you found them, essentially. And so that was a way to save money on the prior topic, right? Hey, let's not include these rooms. Well, 3 or 4 of them at Mountain View are still being used as a classroom. Dance is included. So it was critical to get those back where they were being used as classrooms. And then after some of the safety events we had in the fall, there was very loud, strong sentiment that, hey, we need them in every room that we were using on campus, including these portables. So we went back in and spent the time and money to install them there. And so the per unit cost was same as the devices that are in all the new classrooms, but it's not just the device. It's not, remote control. You got to pull the Ethernet cable to get there and, take it back to the local IDF closet. So some of the costs is, labor and wire involved with that too. So we're looking at that cost of, hey, that's the same cost we paid for the 200 other speakers we got. It's the same per unit cost.
But these are portables, right?
Correct.
They're all temporary, right? Eventually.
Yep.
Right.
So we will save these when we return the portables. We'll remove the clock speakers. The cabling really, you wouldn't really reuse, but the clock speakers we would use and have if we had used them in new locations, or could pull them out of the portables and put them in new construction areas if those portables were being returned immediately after the new construction.
And you said, and you mentioned the safety concern. Is that because so they cannot hear?
So yeah, one
there's
portion.
no way we could have put a louder speaker or something where they could hear.
Yeah, and we had emails and conversations with Wynn Satterwhite and Mike Jimenez about those things and in those situations, and received several emails from teachers, about that. And so we want to make sure that he showed the safety was important. When we had incidents on campus, that every room had a working speaker in it.
Okay, great, thanks.
I was trying to find. Anyway, yeah, I think
I think this one's a bit of a safety issue too, because if you can't communicate with people, for instance, in our situation we had the other day with the shelter in place and so on, that is a problem. And people weren't thinking that, this is more than temporary, but since they're there for longer, I know it seems expensive, but it seems to me safety trumps other things. Deanna? Well, I didn't know if there's any other comments. Any other comments? No? Phil, do you have comments?
No,
Phil, can you hear us? Can you hear us, Phil?
I hear you twice.
All right, great. All right, so may I have a motion on the current 16.4?
I move that we approve 16.4.
Okay, a motion by Sanjay and a second by Fiona. I don't think it does. He just said on the screen, he's okay. It is causing an echo.
Okay, we'll give it a try. Real
Okay.
good.
Ava, how do you vote? Riley? Okay. On board, all those in favor say aye.
Aye.
Aye. Bill, thumbs up?
Aye.
All right. All those opposed? Carries 5-0. And moving on to 16.5, the old 16.4, change order 11D.
So I guess I'd like to understand, so again, it sounds like we've already been work been done or approved or whatever's going on, but to me, I guess I don't understand this 174 change order of 80K to provide basically hard wiring to the workstations. I did read your thing about Wi-Fi. I guess I still don't feel, I mean, I understand workstations and I understand how things are used. So I guess I would, but I do want to understand a little bit more as to the reason why Wi-Fi cannot be used in this case, because I don't, and I read your thing, but I don't, for some reason, I don't buy the reason that was given, because I understand how these programs are run, and these workstations are pretty powerful, so natively, most of these software applications can be run natively, and if it really needs a lot more power, it would be run remotely on a server. That's how most, software applications are going to be run. So I guess again, I think to me this is a nice to have, maybe, and it probably would, I would have second guessed that this is something that we should have paid for.
Yeah, and I need to do a little more detailed, gathering for you on this. Right, I know it's the one-story engineering computer science wing. I believe it's just the 2 computer science labs, but I want to, and that's what I shared in my weekly update, right? But I do want to circle back and look at the notes and the teacher requests of the specific teachers to refresh my memory on the specific details of it, right? Because the actual work was done, a few months ago. But I do believe it has to do with the original layout of furniture, again, in those rooms, the initial thought and how they were running computer science in the older classrooms, and where the data and electrical, they want to go in the new rooms. And we did purchase some, dedicated machines as opposed to using laptops, I believe is what they were using in the prior system or prior computer science classrooms. So I hear that it's not a satisfactory reason, and I owe you more detail to kind of,
they could have added repeaters maybe in a room if they needed, a stronger Wi-Fi signal that was missing. But it seems like there could have been another much more cost-effective solution.
I want to get more details on the layout and where we put them and how many they expect to begin with, and confirm, was it just the two computer science classrooms, which is just in a brief summary conversation last Thursday to address some of these questions. I want to get the details from and confirm it didn't include any of the engineering lab space too, because that would be a larger square footage area and spread over more rooms than just 2 computer science rooms.
Because, and so that's what you're saying.
So I want to confirm whether it was just the 2 computer science rooms, which is my belief and understanding now, based upon a short conversation I had with the RGM Kramer team last Thursday, or whether it really included the 3 engineering lab spaces as well, because then that cost is spread over 5 rooms instead of just 2 rooms. And how many outlets we're talking about is probably a larger number.
And this work again has already been done.
Mhm.
So started, okay.
Yep. It may not help at all on any of this, standalone, right? It's a $93,000 for this group of potential change orders, right? But this is where, at least I look at the holistic, picture of it, right? The prior change order for this contractor was a credit of $550,000, right? So the net contract amount at the end is actually less than what we started with. Granted, we're looking, to save every dollar we can at this point, right? So it's good to review every decision.
Right. We should put those costs maybe in a different project, right? Like
Certainly.
Gyms or some other place that we may think would be a better place to put.
Yeah.
Costs. That's kind of like I just want to me, I'm just more confident to do that now, because the analysis we did a few weeks ago, right? Saying we had to make these trade-offs is, it's pretty hard. Those are hard decisions to make, and rather us kind of just be more conscious of where all these little costs are going and whether it makes sense or not. All right, thank you. So,
Is that all the comments that there is from other members of the board too? Okay, may I have a motion on the new 16.5 change
I'll make a
order
motion to
11D?
approve 16.5.
Okay, Sanjay moves and
I second.
Debbie seconds. Ava, how say you? Approve? Riley? Okay. Board, all in favor, say aye.
Aye.
All opposed, say nay. That carries 5-0. Plus the students. So now we are on to several pages behind. All right. 17.1. That would be the high school second semester update on COVID-19 mitigations. And Dr. Meyer will now have the floor.
All right, thank you. All right, well, as we're coming back tonight, we're going to share an overview, very comprehensive, of the work that we have done to prepare and hopefully continue our second semester. What I would like to start with, I would like to thank our MVLA team. You'll see this really has been a group effort as we pull together from a variety of different departments, the work that we're doing as we move forward. I will go through the presentation. And if you have specifics, we have our district experts who are here to answer them for you. So as we're navigating the COVID landscape, we'll start out to share, we're going to point to some data that has changed around COVID, some FAQs that we have put together from recent questions that have come forward. We'll talk about the mitigations that we're putting together around testing, ventilation, masks, the QR code screening. A lot of this will sound like deja vu, but you'll also hear some of the new things that we're putting in place. And then we'll discuss again the online options for those who prefer to stay at home and learn remotely, and then do our independent study. We'll have some information about the academic supports that we provide, as well as, and this is the last one, is recently emerging and still, we're waiting on some final information, but information around athletics and extracurriculars. I'm gonna do a check-in, maybe someone can see if Bill.
Debbie, will you take that?
Test.
Okay, test. Good. Okay, Phil, can you hear us? Say a thumbs up. I mean, or do thumbs up.
Yeah, I can hear you.
Thank you. So we actually put a slide in our presentation knowing that we would have a change, but we didn't expect it might be over the weekend. But we had two rather substantial changes that occurred to the guidance that we had received that occurred over this weekend. And we did receive some of it as this morning. And so the two main categories, the first includes the quarantine period for positive cases. And then the second included really confirmation that we received about the hybrid and, some information around the fact that virtual learning is no longer allowable under Ed Code, and that amendment to the Ed Code expired in June of 2021. So those are two big points that we wanted to share. For the quarantine, we'll have a 5-day adjustment if qualified with a negative test for students and staff. So that's a change. And a letter went out today from our COVID designee that delineated the guidelines around what that process would look like. And so right away, I'm going to, if I could, ask Layla Benson, our Associate Superintendent, to briefly describe what this quarantine change looks like and what that process will be.
Okay, thank you. Yes, so we did send a clarifying letter about this change that occurred over the weekend, and we actually already have people submitting to return. So it sounds like, and most people are understanding the directions clearly, but what the new quarantine guidelines say, this is for both students and staff. After you receive a positive test, from the date of your first positive test, whether that be an antigen or PCR test, you can start the clock ticking. And then you need to isolate for 5 days. Once you are completing your 5-day isolation period, the question is, do you need to stay home in quarantine, or are you able to come back? And the way you know the difference is you take, and they say preferably, an antigen test. And if your antigen test on day 5 is negative, you can return. This means you also have to have no fever and no active symptoms, so that you have to be essentially asymptomatic. If on day 5 you actually still test positive, you can still try again, day 6, day 7, day 8, day 9. And if during that period of time you actually test negative and you meet the criteria, you can return. So this is the way you can opt out of a quarantine period. You have to always fulfill the 5-day isolation period, which starts after your test date. There are some other ins and outs where people want to talk to us about adjusting their quarantine period. We do not adjust, their isolation period. We do not adjust isolation periods unless a doctor has attested to the adjustment. And that's when someone says, oh, I tested, let's say hypothetically on Saturday, but really my symptoms started on Friday. Well, we have no way of knowing your symptoms started Friday, so a doctor would have to attest to that. So it's always from the date of test, and all of our rules are built around the day of your first test, your first positive test.
Okay, thank you.
A couple questions on it. So one is, are we currently asking for proof if a positive test, if a student has a positive test?
So we ask them to submit their positive test so we can do the counting.
Okay.
And they do submit. So we have 2 forms. The first form is to tell us that you're COVID positive, so we can know why you're out.
Right.
And then we have now a second form. So the first form does ask for a test image. Okay, I'm switching mics. Am I okay now? Okay.
Better.
Okay, so, so you do submit a test to show your first positive day, and then when you submit to us to come out of your isolation period, we're asking for an image of your negative test. So we are monitoring that, and so we've already had about 15 individuals submit to come out of isolation, so it looks like it's working.
Thank you.
Yes.
Did you say you had another question?
No, no, no.
Oh, okay. Okay. So, and the second one, the information about the ed code, we will cover in more detail in a future slide. All right, so one of the things that we've been talking about, we have been working as a collective group of superintendents throughout the county, and we have been working with the County Office of Education, Santa Clara's, and then also Santa Clara Public Health. And recently, many of you saw the news, but I did want to share just a couple of quotes that came from the article that was just out over the weekend. And I'm not certain if there's a way to pull down that bottom part, if you could. Okay. Oh, there you go. Okay, well, first of all, Dr. Sarah Cody and Superintendent Mary Ann Dewan have said repeatedly that they want districts to stick with in-person learning. And so they're working very hard to support our districts as we work to do the same. I do want to say that within this guidance, the quote here, California stopped allowing schools to offer online instruction instead of in-person class at the end of last June. There is an exception, and that exception is what we're providing with option B, which is an online program that is under the independent study umbrella. And then lastly, a significant quote from these two organizations in their official guidance, and anyone who wants to read it, you can link on our presentation on the board document. The State Department of Public Health notes school districts should offer and provide full in-person instruction to all students safely, even if pandemic dynamics shift throughout the school year. And this, of course, will be affected by vaccination rates and the potential emergence of viral variants. So 2 ways that our schools could be impacted. One would be if one of these state officials deems that we need to shift what we're offering. The second is something we've seen other districts concerned about, and we'll mention our staffing as well, is that if there's a staffing need. So those are the 2 things that we're monitoring closely. Excuse me. And now I think, yes, please. I think the move, perfect. Okay, so virtual learning amendment, to give you a little more information about that. You can certainly read it here, but it is very significant that unlike last year, the rules are different. Current law does not allow schools to offer distance learning. Virtual learning can only be offered, as I mentioned previously, through independent study, and families must choose to participate in the program. This is the current ed code. We know last year we didn't have a lot of choices. It just occurred. And then the statute specifically states students may not be required. And then we wanted to list the ed code section. This is for the 21-22 school year only. They must obtain an independent study agreement if there are any students who want to participate in the option B online program. Previously, that was something that was not required, but there's quite a bit of paperwork that goes with independent study. And so this is the state of California telling us that they're going to resume their former practice. I could have the next slide, please. That's okay. Okay, thank you. Despite the surge, as I mentioned, in the absence of a state or local health order, LEAs do not have the explicit legal authority to shift to virtual learning outside of that independent study statute. So I may sound like I'm repeating myself, but it's an important point I want to emphasize with the community that this is not something that the Board of Education or the superintendent can vote on. This is something that must be, brought down either by a state official or through an independent study process that we have now.
May I ask a clarifying question? A clarifying question would be, this does not apply to private schools. It applies to K-12 public schools.
Correct.
And it doesn't apply to colleges because they're colleges.
Correct.
So this is our laws and statutes that apply to public education in K-12.
Correct. Our K-12 is compensatory, so students must attend. With 2 students in college, they are online, and they really didn't have to go through a process. It just, they're on, they're off, they're on, they're off. And so it's very different because they are not required to be there. So when we are entrusted with students who are required to be here, the guidelines are much stricter. We can't, for a variety of reasons. Sure.
This doesn't say that the teacher wanted to optionally provide that on their own, that they can if they want, right?
Well, the teacher would have to be teaching in the classroom. So this does say that virtual learning cannot happen on a campus unless it's independent study. But there will be more about that in future. Okay. All right, so to shift, and we'll definitely come back to those questions about what we can do and what we can't, because we've had some great innovation that we've seen, and we've had it for years, and we're continuing to see that. So our dashboard, our current numbers, students and staff who came to the campus within the 48 hours prior to testing positive as of noon today. So we say it with that specificity because we want to be clear that the dashboard and the positive cases is changing every minute. And so this is the number as of noon today. And these are students who came to the campus. We have some who haven't come in, who've tested positive and still have not come to our campuses. But those who here we see 97 students and 24 staff. And this is the number of total staff. And I believe we had 14 teachers on each campus. Is that, or no?
No, we had more than that, about that each campus.
Okay.
Out, but there's a difference between number of staff out and the number of staff out with COVID. So all the numbers are ever fluctuating. You can have staff out for illness, waiting on a test, or for other reasons, bereavement, or other reasons such as that. So,
and so these are specific to COVID positive.
correct. So,
Okay.
and these are staff members, not specifically teachers.
So one significant thing, if you've been reading the news, many other districts have been really struggling, and we are as well. But we know hundreds of classrooms have gone without an adult certificated teacher in the room. At this time, we have not had any classrooms go unfilled. We're continuing to monitor this daily. I have to say a big thank you to our teachers, because they are often teaching during their prep periods, and that really is something that is difficult to sustain. So I do want to say this with that caveat that this is something that we're very proud of. This is something we're not seeing anywhere else. And then to kind of skip to another number, we know.
May I ask another clarifying question on that? Because teaching their prep, that's a voluntary activity, correct? Although they do receive extra compensation.
That is correct.
Okay. So we don't demand you have to give up your prep for this.
Correct.
No, we have been able to work with teachers volunteering. And during this pandemic, I don't think we've ever demanded that somebody do it. Obviously, different people have different preparation cycles and different needs. And we have
been lucky, as Dr. Meyer said, that teachers have been able to step up if they've been able to do it.
Ava? Yes. These are students that they came to campus and then tested positive. Students who were positive and did not come into campus and have not come to school, they're not counted into this. Exactly. And I would say, do you have any
Yes,
clarification?
much
on
bigger
that?
numbers. So there
Mhm.
were some individuals who tested positive over the break and never entered into the school, but reported to us because they were going to be absent and missing classes. There were individuals who thought that they might become positive due to a variety of reasons and never attended school. And then later, even after school started, tested positive. So we do have many more students than the numbers that you see here out absent due to a COVID-related illness. The same goes for staff, just the numbers aren't as large, but it's the same situation. So these are just individuals who might be potential close contacts to people on campus. So when you saw the larger numbers early on, that was just because those are representative of the number of people who actually have COVID who are within our community and not able to come to work or school. Yeah.
Thank you. That was a good question. All right, so shifting to some of the preparation, we are in the process and actually have already received N95 and KN95 masks. We have a total of 8,000. We're in the process of looking at when a new shipment is coming. We've heard in the last, I think it was 48 hours, that the governor plans to send out masks to campuses, perhaps much in the same way that the antigen tests were sent out. So we're monitoring that process. There is a concern that it might need to go too many places. And so we're still seeing whether we need to order our own even more. But currently we have ordered these, and I think January 11th is the date that we're expecting, which is tomorrow. And so we've been talking about it for so long. And so we're excited about getting those. We have some now. And then regarding the antigen tests, over 4,500 antigen tests were distributed. And we've ordered 5,000 more because we know that this now is going to be the test that we're going to be using more frequently, and it is difficult to get. So we're really trying to be proactive and order these as soon as possible. And we'll talk a little bit in another board item about how we would like to do some proactive testing upon return from ski week. And so sites will be the contact for the distribution, and we know that the county will likely be the contact for any additional masks that we may receive. We requested of the county and also have been working with their connections in the county. And we were at this time told that the adult ed students will not be able to get the antigen tests. What we're looking at doing is not only advocating for that through their adult ed consortium and opinion. I think that really wasn't something people thought of when they were doing this distribution. And so we want to make sure that, first of all, there's that understanding of how large our adult ed programs are and the students within them, their needs. And then also we are getting information to our adult eds about other places they can go and test. But it is something really that's still in process. And we have made multiple requests to the county. And I believe they had a little sticker shock when they saw the number. We would need 2,000, but we're still continuing those efforts and also looking to purchase them to support adult ed. And so Julie's done a good job of breaking out by program, the different programs, and
I don't know if I would say they were prioritized, but there are some that, high school diploma program, English learner program, the CNET program. They are, looking for career pathways and self-sufficiency, whereas the others that may be more, I don't want to say they're for hobbies, but they're more of a choice that perhaps some, adults are taking, to learn how to do different things, paint, etc. Very valuable, but we're going to prioritize the programs that are meant for those who are at greater need. So we're still talking about that.
Testing though, I mean, our 2 test sites that we have, we're open to the community, right? So you
Yes.
can register, you don't have to be, yes, they do have a section for staff and teachers and students, but also community as well. And so
Yes.
you can register as a community and come and get tested here. I mean, that's what I think is fantastic.
Exactly.
About what we've done. And I was going to say, that's, I want a shout out to everything we've done, and you and Layla and the team. I think it's been great for the community because they can come here. I did it when I came back from the holidays to check, right? And it's fantastic. And there was some people in our Rotary Club
Yes.
that they couldn't get it, if you recall, right?
Yes, and they came here?
They came here
Mhm.
to get tested. So I think it's, we do offer that. So I know our adult schools participants could use these test sites as well.
Yes.
If it's not, I know at the adult school, but they could come to either Los Altos or the district office to get tested as well.
And once a week, they are offering it on the adult ed campus. So we do have that. And thank you for that. It's certainly well deserved. This team has worked very hard and has developed a very strong model. And so we're now kind of in that place where antigens are needed for this program for a different purpose, perhaps a speedier purpose, but certainly the standard of the PCR testing that we provided has been really just wonderful. It's really helped the community.
But
And our
could
also
I just interject here?
to our
All the testing we've been talking about, I believe, are offered during the daytime. And there are adult ed students who have to work full-time during the daytime. Is there any provision for doing nighttime testing?
that is an excellent question, and I was going to put Julie on the spot, but instead I will pass to Layla.
So there's 2 things before we pass to Julie about nighttime. We did post this and we would explain this later in the presentation. Just like everywhere, the test administrators are experiencing illness themselves, not necessarily through the testing, but just like all the rest of us. So we had to go back to our half day, one site, the other half of the day, the second site, until we can expand the hours. We are implementing some other possible solutions. I don't want to overspeak right now, but we have some possible individuals who can train and provide the test. And we have some other employees who have previously helped us administer the test. And then of course, our COVID team and Chris Mvla, if he's listening, he's been administering the test to assist. And I know at the sites, the principals have done the same, and the assistant principals and the trainers. So anyways, long story short, we can expand it potentially, but right now our base hours, we're having, some staffing challenges, but we're partnering with a team over at Adult Ed. And if that is a successful endeavor, we will probably have expanded testing opportunities.
So we were able to have the full day for the last couple of weeks, but prior to that, the program had half day and it still continued to be successful. But I do believe that that's a nice way of also saying that in the past, it took about a minute. And now we've seen it may take a little bit longer, but it's still been something that
I think under 10
efficient,
minutes.
under 10 minutes.
There was a little line that wrapped around the building. I think we are, as far as we've heard feedback, the fastest test site that one can go to still these days. That being said, we do ask for patience. And I think the one thing about the community aspect is we see that as an advantage to all of us because we're all interconnected. teachers and students who are during the school day, it'd be lovely if a community member doesn't have a super tight time frame to sort of let the teachers and students go ahead because of the time frame. We certainly don't want to close it to anyone or be too official because it has been highly valuable and we've been partners with our partner districts and we have siblings that need to test. So it's all very interconnected. But we are hopeful that we are going to be able to expand the testing time yet again. We just need to sort of figure out how to do that.
And it may go without saying, but if you're a Mountain View family and you need to go when Los Altos is open, you can. So you can go to either place.
That's true.
And I guess I would advise if there are any community members listening, the most difficult times are before school and after school. So anytime during the day is much better in the midday. All right, Julie, do you provide testing in the evening for your students?
Currently don't provide testing in the we have the one-time police slot on Tuesdays from 11 to 12. There is a request because our students are in the classes from 9 to 12 and we have the chance to get in for half an hour. So from 11:30 to 12:30 or 11 to 12:30, that was possibility. And we are also looking at purchasing antigen tests because that would resolve the situation at night for night testing.
Thank you. And also, Phil, to your point, we have explored weekend testing and the testing groups that we've been working with are pretty tight about Monday through Friday, and they have a rhythm that they use. So that has not been available. However, it has been available for city groups who have been using the weekend successfully. So we're continuing to get that information out to everyone about the different times that you can test, but our testers are not available on the weekend. So thank you, Julie.
So, Nellie, I wasn't able to hear Julie's answer. Could you just?
Oh, my
summarize?
apologies. She stated that they are testing during the day and she requested to have an extension possibly of that time because of when the classes start and end. So we will look at that internally as a staff. But she also mentioned that they are in the process of trying to purchase antigen rapid tests so their nighttime students could take those tests.
Great, thank you. That
Thank you.
helps. Yeah.
All right, so one of the questions I had, and I know others in the community have had, surrounded the attendance. Because as mentioned, you're saying it looks different, it may feel different. There may be some classes hit harder than others. We may not know why they're gone. It could be they're not feeling well, but it could be, as mentioned, it could be a variety of things. So I wanted to show you, this was the first week back and we will continue to monitor it. But you can see here, you have, approximately, in the 90s, maybe some high 80s here. And then for Los Altos High and for Mountain View High School. So when I checked in with my colleagues, this was higher. There was a range that kind of fit in the same category, although there were some schools, especially in unified districts, where some schools were particularly hit. But this is right within the range. Just for, you can see Alta Vista also in the 80s, pretty significantly high in this case, considering it's the first week back from winter break. One thing of note that was brought to my attention today is that overall, these numbers are pretty darn near approximately 2% lower overall, but we haven't had a chance to go back and look at the first week of January. That 2% would be an annual number, and this week typically has lower attendance, a little bit lower anyway, but you can kind of see that. And just wanted you to be aware, we're going to continue to track it. And if you have any questions about attendance, we're happy to answer them.
Well, I guess quick question just to confirm, but so these are attendance, right? We don't necessarily correlate these to how many positive tests.
No.
for the first-
Yeah, but we did want to see this because we heard some horror stories across the county, you know, some had 70% returning in that first week. And some even in the 60s. So we did want to see that we're seeing a slight change and hoping it continues to be in the 90s and high 80s. So some questions we want to answer, we'll go through them pretty quickly, but I do want to say that our FAQs that we have on our website are updated probably daily. There where you will find the most relevant and most recent information. But we do have some new questions that we've kind of pulled from emails and other sources and people who have written us on a variety of topics. So I'll go through them rather quickly, but they will be available and they have great links that you can if you want more information. So what masks? There's mask guidance that's provided by the California Department, or excuse me, not the California Department of Public Health. And you can see here information we already shared about our KN95 and our N95, and guidance also is out there around, if possible, because of this new variant, and you don't have these masks, double mask. And so we're gonna start to talk about this more on our campuses, but we're seeing that our staff and our students seem very aware of this, but we did want to put this on the FAQ. We also, what is the process? I believe Ms. Benson mentioned and shared it very accurately that there is a letter that went out, and then also that we really want to emphasize that if you're not feeling well, even if you are negative, stay home. And you know, as educators, we thought we would never say that, but we want to make sure you keep yourself and the community safe. And then these are the forms to report. We have one for students available on our FAQ, as well as a report for our employee, as mentioned. Kind of shifting, another question, we had a lot of information about the ventilation, especially with the weather getting colder and rainier. We continue to adhere to the latest guidance to maximize the ventilation. We're doing what we did last year. I think this group has heard it more than anyone. MERV 13 filters. We do have CO2 monitors in the classroom, and we're continuing to have the conversation about how to ventilate your classroom properly and our spaces. Okay, so more questions that we've received. What changes do we see? Well, I think we know the variant is highly contagious and reportedly involves milder symptoms. And we're hoping that this is something that we're going to be able to go through and see the other side of, but we're of course monitoring closely. In next question, I think this was answered in a previous slide, but we've had this question come up a lot in correspondence that we've received. Will MVLA return to distance learning? If the ed code is amended, we would then need to have agreement from multiple parties if we change that delivery of instruction. And so currently, our two options include in-person instruction, and then we also are continuing with our option B, online instruction, and option B is under the umbrella of independent study. So that's a question that we've received quite a bit of late. Testing. What is available? How do I get tested? How do I take the antigen take-home test? Must students test before coming back from a break? And I think we've answered this, but we did want to just let you know that this is available. You need to go back and refer to the answer. And so we know that testing is really a part of helping us get through this. And then where can I find the latest information on the MVLA COVID cases? We have the link with our dashboard, and our
that's something also that we update regularly, and it's a valuable resource for those who are interested in our current numbers. Then there's just, here's a slide that we wanted to bring to the community and share, and it's really under the topic of myth busters. There's a lot of information out there, and part of it is because the information has changed so quickly. So it's not that anyone's making it up, it's just that it was that way, and it's changed maybe 2 or 3 times since. So some of the information stuck, some didn't, etc. So this is the current information, and we wanted to clarify some things. So first, can the Board of Education or superintendent go to virtual learning? I think we've answered this, but we did want to share this slide because we will be sharing it more widely. And no, in June 2021, the state of California eliminated that option. Secondly, can the Board of Education or superintendent move to a hybrid model? We received guidance as recently as this morning from the County Office of Education, and they said that is still considered the hybrid model, where you're teaching students who are on Zoom and you're teaching students in the room at the same time, that would fall under the category of virtual learning, and so it still would be in violation of ed code. The discussion of having anyone listen, or perhaps looking at different ways through recording or some other type of way. We have had some teachers in the past who have done that as part of their regular program. Some we understand may be interested in doing that, but at this point, we've also heard from many who may not be interested in doing that. And so if we were to look at any kind of different type of practice, this would be something that would need agreement from a variety of parties, including Board of Ed, staff, superintendent and staff, and our labor partners. So just if that were something that we were going to move toward. One of the things, why don't we have an online option? We did get this question this week, and we do. We have option B, and it is a program supervised by our MVLA teaching staff, and they have weekly check-ins also if they have any difficulty with the subject. But for the most part, the content is provided via the online program. No. Okay. Terry, did you want to maybe expand?
Yeah. No, there's not a date, although the semesters are aligned with our site high schools. And so the later that they sign up, the more time crunch it's going to be to complete the class by the end of the semester. Are you sure? And that's particularly important for everybody, but definitely our seniors to know, because having those classes done by the Friday before the graduation walk is, imperative for them.
So can I ask a question? If we have a student that tests positive that goes to have to be at home, what is the recommended approach that they should do to be able to stay current with their class? What is recommended? Email the teacher, ask for assignments. What is the recommended approach for students?
I think it's all of those things. I could start and maybe pass it forward. All of the things that you mentioned, and we're very pleased that 5 days is now been something that students can have instead of 10. Makes a big difference in how long you're out of class. We also have, and I learned this from Terry today, we have every teacher is on Canvas or Google Classroom. So assignments and information is on those platforms, so they can go in and they can see their work. And I don't know if you had anything to add.
So no, I don't have anything to add. We do prompt them with the form to ask them to please email their teachers. And, in rare occasion, we've had someone circle back expressing that there's been a delay. I think obviously we all know there's nothing like being in the classroom, but we have heard very positive stories of teachers reaching out and trying to find creative ways. And I think that paired with the possibility of the shortened quarantine ideally is going to help alleviate some of the concern. Although, you know, never all of the concern, because there's nothing like the in-person instruction. So.
Right, so with the block schedule, potentially you're missing your class 2+ times, right? The full day and then So you would be checking in with your teacher via email or whatever and asking for assignments and trying to stay up to date.
Correct. Right.
But the assignment is definitely better than 10. But for honors and AP courses, 5 days is one.
It is.
And even for students that, you know, that this person that 5 days still looks really well. So, you know, I hope that we continue to look at options to help students that, you know, have to be in quarantine. Even if it's just 5 days, but, you know, some students may have to be more than 5 days, and also multiple 5 days out of the semester, depending on what happens. So I just, you know, I'm glad, I think we are looking at options.
We are looking at options. And we have teachers who've been very creative, as has been mentioned. And so we're really pleased with some of the ideas that have come up about how to keep students up to date.
Oh, I didn't hear, I heard your response, but I didn't hear, I think it was Sanjay. Could you just summarize what his question was?
Would you like me to? I can do so. His comment was that in a class, especially high level, but really all classes, 5 days is of course better than 10, but 5 days of missed classroom instruction really sets students back. And so he's pleased that we're seeing some innovative practices. I don't mean to put words in your mouth, but also pleased that we're exploring options on the best way to help students keep up.
May I jump in?
Yes, absolutely.
In addition,
Excuse me, Tana.
there's been conversations with our teachers of a reminder of this is not business as usual. These are some challenging times, and to be flexible with grading and deadlines and assessments, et cetera, for those students that may miss a week, that they could use a little extra flexibility, and our staff understands and they get that. And unfortunately, this is not the first curveball that COVID's throwing us, and so they're ready to roll up their sleeves and help. And I'll just say, in addition, we do have 2 tutorial/act periods. And so when students come back, they have 2 different opportunities that week to go into a class that they could particularly meet with a teacher one-on-one or small group for support, and that could be very advantageous as well.
And I think I just read too that the tutorial is now going back to virtual, some of the tutorial. I thought maybe that was it. We don't see that.
No.
I
Okay.
I mean, both are happening, but that for kids at home, they could access it. I mean, the comment that I wanted to add was actually a thank you to the teachers, because I mean, various folks long before COVID were already recording their lessons. And while we can't, per ed code, we can't return back to hybrid, we can't mandate that. A lot of these conversations have to be worked out together, but nothing prevents the teachers from doing all the things that they normally do to support their kids and being really creative. And so just thank you, because I know many teachers have already made all kinds of accommodations, or are zooming kids in, or are recording their lessons and posting them on YouTube, which they were already doing prior to COVID. All of that. It's so just a thank you to the teaching teams at both sides.
We really appreciate that, because as Terry mentioned, when our conversation about it's not business as usual occurred, they were leading that conversation, and they were really the ones who came out and said, we know we have to be flexible, we know, and they're really doing an excellent job. So thank you for that.
Yeah, so appreciate it.
So I just want to,
Don't ask a question.
yeah, I just want to add to what I think it was Fiona was saying, and that is several people called me towards the end of last week and over the weekend, and they are all tremendously grateful to the teachers who are all putting in such extra effort to try to keep kids who are missing class informed and up to date on the lessons. And they are especially interested and very eager to see if more of them would do what Fiona just said about recording their lessons. Of course, the teachers would have complete creative control, as they say in show business, over the content. This would just, so many parents have emphasized to me that it's tremendously anxiety provoking for their kids not to be able to see what the kids in class are seeing, even if they see it a day late. It would really reduce the anxiety level a tremendous amount, I believe, for that to be done. So I hope more teachers will adopt that, and we can add protections for teachers. The district could exert a copyright on that material so that it can't be copied and reproduced. It's only for the use of the student. All these conditions can be applied. And of course, we could also make it by request so that the parents have to specifically request access to that and agree to these conditions. So I do hope that discussions can proceed in this venue and the venue of our usual negotiations to get us to that point. So thank you all for doing that.
Thank you. And we'll certainly pass on the gratitude.
I have one more comment, and that is, I think all the comments I've heard have also said that the teachers have been incredibly gracious towards their students and the parents, and very flexible, and they are changing the paradigm of the way instruction's been delivered over the last whatever year, I'm a mathematician, years. And we're sorry that COVID has caused us to do this shift in our thinking about how to deliver instruction. But some teachers have really taken it to heart and been very innovative in combining different ways of instruction for students. And we're getting another opportunity to practice, unfortunately, with this new wave of COVID. I do have one other question that's not quite related, though, back to the option B online, and that is, there's no floating back and forth. You don't say, oh, I'll take online for 2 weeks because I'm out, and then I'll go back to my regular class, correct?
So per AB 104, yes, we have to allow floating. However, we highly discourage it, and we communicate the challenges that it does bring to go between online curriculum with like, set assignments and lessons that are different than the in class, and the pacing is different, and it's not easy to match where the content is at in the curriculum, as well as just some of the anxiety or the challenges it is for a student to go from asynchronous to now having to get ready to go back to class and be amongst all the peers. And but yes, we do have to allow it.
So this could be a case for somebody that, I don't know, have some sort of injury that it was going to keep them out for 6 weeks or something, and that would be too long to try to keep up with their in class on campus, and do that maybe that would be a quarter maybe, and then they could come.
That would be more ideal than the ping pong.
And then back and forth. Yeah.
I think some, oh, excuse me, go ahead.
I was gonna understand, clarify. So can students, like, so this semester, if they're, for take an example of Calc BC, can they say, oh, well, I'm gonna just take Calc BC in option B online the rest of the semester instead of in person on campus, but still take the rest of their courses maybe that they have? Can they do that?
The answer is no.
Okay.
So per AB 104, it is, this program, independent study, is specifically set up to provide all online, all remote learning during the pandemic. In addition, so it's not a hybrid program, to, bottom line. I could go into the details of the why, but it's not I want to take these classes on site and these classes online. It's an all or none. And the reason why the reason why we set up option B is because of the challenges of the pandemic, not because some students want to take certain classes online and certain classes in seat. Maybe that's a future program that MVLA will develop, but in terms of the pandemic and option B, it's an all remote program.
Well, so then how would the float work then? Are you saying, so people can float back and forth?
With all your classes.
Right, but these option B, you can finish it in a month. You can finish one of the courses in a, because basically it's independent study. You watch a video, you take an exam, you're done. Then you don't need to take the course in person. You decide, okay, I want to come back.
Correct. So if you completed,
How would that work?
yeah, so if you completed a class in option B and the semesters, then when you return back to in seat, you don't have to complete the class. I would say though that nobody's completing classes far in advance to be able to return in seat. It is all online, but it is not something that you can hammer through unless you're only focused on one particular class. I mean, it's roughly 60 to 70 hours of work per class. And so that's an average of 5 or 6 hours a day of learning, 5 or 6 hours a week per class.
Interesting. One thing that we're very proud of that not every place is offering, we are offering option B for students who don't feel comfortable being on the campus. Many are only allowing that for those who've tested positive or quarantining only for purposes of COVID. So this is something that we hope to continue because it does address a subset of students who thrive with an online. So something that I think that we really should be proud of. Okay, so going through the myth bust, the next one, the campus needs to shut down due to the high numbers. We've received a handful, I'd say less than 5, maybe 3 or 4 emails that have said that we should shut down and go to complete virtual learning. I think we've mentioned this multiple times already, but one point we wanted to emphasize, we are seeing a complete spike in the positivity rate when we look at the county-wide and area-wide numbers, but our medical experts are emphasizing that now we're definitely seeing the decoupling of the hospitalization and death rate. So the hospitalization rate and the death rate are still extremely low as the numbers spike. So that points to the fact that, I mean, we can surmise due to the high vaccination rate within the county that people may be getting sick or they may be even asymptomatic. But in the past, you could see the numbers, even though they weren't perfectly aligned, they were completely coupled and they moved together. And now that has changed. So that's good news. That also is something that they're using to guide us to remain in person. So that decoupling was one of the main reasons that our medical experts are advising us to stay on campus. And once again, there's the dashboard, if anyone wants to look at it there. And then moving forward, this is just maybe a way that I can say, if you are not receiving our community letters, please check your spam. Sometimes because they go out to so many, they go into that file, but I think more and more people are now receiving them. Since the first of the year, we have had multiple community letters and also multiple staff letters from our COVID designee office and also from my office. And when we've looked at them and we track them, over 18,000 visits to each of the letters that we've sent so far, sometimes multiple, but we do have about 12,000 to 15,000 who receive it. And then also, once again, there's a button on our front of our webpage where you can link to the COVID-19 information as well. I believe Terry mentioned some of the supports that we have, but we wanted to provide this guide for those who would like it for reference. But once again, you can see that the online options that we have, they both use Edgenuity, the program, and one is part of the adult education program at Moffitt, and the other is part of the Option B program that is supported by MVLA teachers. You can see the differences. Moffitt, I'll just go down the line. The teacher is a credentialed teacher for each course. No set schedule. They take their assessments and tests at the adult school. The curriculum is asynchronous, facilitated by an MVLA teacher. The pacing is set by the MVLA teacher, and they can, for support, go to the adult school for assistance if they'd like to go there physically. They may access our tutorial centers on our campuses, and this is for both school counselors, mental health support, and social emotional learning modules. And it really is for the core college prep classes, and they're very, very few. They're limited electives in the Moffitt course. The option B, very similar. You have Edgenuity, the program. You have an MVLA mentor teacher who is signed up, who wants to do this, and they support our online students. You don't have a set weekly schedule. Students could do it in the middle of the night if they so choose. We do not recommend that. But it really is something that students can set their own schedule with. So it's very helpful for those who might have family obligations, need to take care of younger siblings, or work obligations. It's also asynchronous through Edgenuity. As I said, self-paced. They may also take advantage of the numerous MVLA supports, tutorial, counseling, mental health supports, SEL. And then the difference here is that it also is core college prep, the courses that you need to graduate. There are honors courses within option B, which is different, AP classes as well, and more electives, a variety of electives. So this is a reference that our schools will be using as we work to communicate this to anyone interested. Other academic supports, we mentioned the tutorial period, the tutorial center. We've extended library hours, built-in instructional support, access to lessons via Canvas or Google Classroom. Our counselors, of course, are there, and we also have online programs within our school, as you're aware of. Alex for math, we have Khan Academy classes, and others. And then just to share with you the specialized programs, our College Now and middle college students will be following Foothill protocols, and currently Foothill is online only. And so our middle college and College Now students are taking their courses online. Freestyle will remain the same, and I think we mentioned what option B and adult ed will be doing. Yes.
Why can't I say her name? Anyway, thank you. Are they in person for
They
those
were in
two?
person. I think what Dr. Meyer is referring to is that due to the response, the COVID policy at Foothill, due to circumstances, they have disbanded for a short while. They're doing,
Okay,
yeah.
so they've got the 2 weeks.
Yeah.
Okay.
Exactly. Thank you. And then this one is still in process, I think is the best way to say it. But we're working to get some definitive guidance so we can be clear on athletics and extracurriculars. And these ones are tougher. I have to say we received some very definitive information in the last week that there may be if needed, games held on Sundays, which is new. Spectators are likely to be limited to family groups. And looking at the number of cases with our extracurriculars that we may see makeup games, and we're really already thinking about when those might be. And that for the arts and our performances, similar guidance is likely. So we have had, once again, some very innovative teachers who have taken their performances outside. Some are limiting the numbers within the theater, and some are really working hard because it's extracurricular. They are, you know, having conversations about vaccinations and what they might need to participate. And I don't know if there's any other new guidance, but as that comes out, what we're looking at is really following much of what happens within the classroom in athletics. And currently outside, masks are optional, but inside our basketball games, et cetera, masks are required. And that's a change. Last season at least, it was impracticable. Well, if you're playing a hard sport, you know, if you're running up and down the court, it's very difficult. And this year that is not an option. You must wear a mask, and everyone watching must wear a mask. So that will be something we'll continue to monitor. It could shift and change depending on the numbers or incidents of positive cases.
May I ask a question?
Certainly.
Of Riley, in your report, have you had any, what is the protocol for the trips that have happened?
I'm actually in off season right now, but for our first season there were protocols, but I started in 12th season. We're also an national sport, and we don't have any contact with each other. So my sport's
The least
contact
like,
with all of them. Yeah.
although are you in sports? I didn't know.
Yeah.
And what ones have you been in, and are they been affected by the COVID protocol?
I did water polo and then swimming too. And because they're like water sports, it's a little different. There's not that much protocol. Water polo is very contact. Yeah.
Sports that are not affected as the other, yeah.
Yeah.
But I have heard, I have a friend who does basketball, and he said it's really hard to wear a mask while they're practicing.
But if you run faster than everyone else, then you're not in contact with them. Is that correct? Okay. Thank you for that, because we recognize that is the case. It is difficult. So recent developments, I think we've hit it, but we're winding up the information. The quarantine changed in the last few days over the weekend to reduce from 10 to 5 days with a negative test. You may return for staff and students. Some testing requirements as well. Previously, it had been, if you had an antigen that was positive, you needed to confirm it with a PCR. That is no longer needed. Antigens are acceptable, in some cases preferable. The antigen test will be accepted, and you may test at home or at school. Also previously, there had been some guidance in different places. We were using PCR, but you had to somehow prove or have a witness or even take a picture when you were taking the antigen test. That really was something that didn't impact us, but that is no longer the case across the county. So you can take the antigen test at home and just fill in your results. And as Ms. Benson mentioned, the testing has been impacted. And so we did want to share that we're back to where we were for most of the semester with half days instead of full days, but we are exploring creative ideas on how to possibly expand that if possible in the future. And then thank you to our COVID designee team. They've done a wonderful job of responding and assisting. So they said not to thank them, but we're going to thank them again. And then also, if you have questions, the email is there, COVID designee, and updates on the FAQ occur daily. And they also include weekly summaries. So this presentation, hopefully, I know it's been long, it's had a lot of information, but hopefully it can be a resource that people can keep if they want to go back to anything. And then more resources here, procedures, dashboard, designee, FAQ. And then we also included the organizations that help guide our decision-making countywide: Santa Clara Public Health, Santa Clara County Office of Ed, and California Department of Public Health. And lastly, we would like to thank the Board of Education, and I would like to thank our COVID and our staff for their excellent work. As mentioned, the administrators on our campus have worked very hard. They have, come in on their weekends and develop distribution plans on the turn of a dime. And then also our teachers who have been flexible, who have been working together as a community to support our students. So, and of course, our students who give us excellent feedback and help us guide our decision making. So with that concludes my presentation. Thank you.
Thank you, Dr. Meyer. I worked at a college, and I am bad at pronunciation names, sorry. So we have Day on Tim and Anya Masaya here. And they said they were going to be covering this presentation for their journalism one class at Alto High School, but maybe they're listening in online. So if you're there, hi, and I hope you got some good information and write a nice story. So at this time, this is a just action item. And we've asked some questions already, but I would like to go ahead and have public comment, and then if the board has more comments or questions, we'll do that. So do we have public comment? And I must first say that we did have some letters that came to the board that were asked to be read out loud into the record. Our procedure that was established last year is that we will put them in the minutes to the meeting, so everyone will know, the entire set of comments, know that we have all read them. There were a number of them on this topic, and so we already had your comments on that. So is there any other members of the public here tonight that would like to comment on this item 17.1, this COVID-19 report? No, hearing none. Does the board have any more questions or comments to the staff? Thank you. Thank you very much. Thank you very much. And I think that a number of the questions and comments brought up in the letter from the public were addressed, and that is one thing about getting the letters in advance, and also the other correspondence that the board has had in the last couple of weeks, that we had an opportunity to read them, respond to some extent, and then the staff has had a chance to go through them and incorporate information that would answer those questions in the report.
I think we should add that Quinn and Debbie, are you on? Okay. Just that the communication that's coming out from our sites has been really good. I'm on distribution for both Los Altos and Mountain View, and I want to say thank you so much for the information that you're sending out to the community and to our staff and to our students. It's clear when I read it, and I think it's really important that we continue to give them timely information, and it's been really nice to see. So thank you.
I think he said the same thing, and they say, well, they said whoever they are, but in general, communication needs to be done in multiple ways to reach people that read different sources, listen to different sources and so on. So I think we're doing a really good job there at the sites to get out information from them and our FAQs from the district are excellent also. And I hope things like this presentation report at the board meeting also is a different venue that is being also recorded so people can listen to it also. To get out the information that we want the community to have. Let's move on then to 17.2. And that is revisions to board policies 6145.6 and administrative regulations 6145.6. International exchange, first reading. So this item is a draft, and the staff will present the draft and explain it. And it's a first reading, which means we will not be taking action on it at this time. And then any comments or so on will be addressed in the next couple of weeks before we bring it back to the board as consent agenda next time. Would that be Terry that would address that issue?
Sure, thank you. So doing a little bit of historical dig, since 9/11, our district, as well as many other school districts, were told by the government that we needed to cancel running our own programs, and was guided towards the I-20 process. With that, it has allowed for students who are able to find their own home and work the I-20 applications, et cetera, to be able to be exchange students with our school district. One of the setbacks or the limitations that the current practice of MVLA has with this process is that it has not worked with exchange programs that have met the standards of, I can't remember the name of the program, hold on a second, the Council for Standards for International Educational Travels Advisory List. It has limited us in working with organizations that fit that list. That means that they meet the criteria, they're viable, credible organizations. And so with that, if a student is interested in being an exchange student from a different country and they don't have an opportunity to find a home, unfortunately, our district has not been able to accommodate them in the past. We had community that has reached out to us with concerns about this over the summer and into the school year. Board of Trustees, I appreciate that you asked that we take a look at our current board policy and AR and take into consideration how valuable having international students join our school and community can give. And so that's where some of the new language on the board policy and the administrative regulations comes in. Highlighted in yellow. So nothing was removed in our board policy. There was nothing that was currently written in our board policy that excluded students from an outside organization, nonprofit organization, to work with us. But I added in language that made it clear that we would be more accepting with these students. And the board policy 6145.6 in yellow, it notes that it's an international student exchange program / J1 visa. So we accept both students coming in on either process. And then again, highlighted in yellow, it notes that we would be working with students that works with an organization that has been approved by the Council for Standards for International Educational Travel Advisory List. And that participating students or exchange program sponsors are to be held accountable and responsible for the student, but that we're willing to work with them. And so that's the the language that was added to our board policy that just clarifies that we will be open to working with accredited international program organizations. And then the administrative language is just a little bit more explicit on expectations for the students. And I do want to say that I spent quite a bit of time reading many different schools, board policies and administrative regulations across the state of California, as well as a lot of other states. Trying to find verbiage that I felt was clear and concise and helped guide our work with our international students. And so that's where you see that there's quite a bit more added to the administrative regulations. That's just making it very clear that when a student comes into the district, our expectations to the organization or to the student that is coming in through the J-1 visa. I also added a little bit of language that just clarifies that we're holding the student to the expectation of every other student at our school. That's with discipline, that's with attendance, etc. And I also added language in that encourages students that are currently ours in our district to consider international exchange programs. And that's the last bit on the administrative regulation that just clarifies if you are an MVLA student and you are interested in becoming an international exchange program, here's what you need to know. Here's what you need to know to be able to make sure that you graduate from MVLA with all of your credentials. I will stop there and open for questions or clarifications.
Yeah, I just have a question about a redundancy, what appears to be a redundancy in the policy. After the bulleted points, the first paragraph seems to repeat the first bulleted point. Is that intentional?
Could you clarify, are you talking about the board policy or the AR? I didn't hear you.
Yeah, the board policy itself, BP 6145.6.
And then could you repeat what the two repetitive paragraphs were that you were pointing out?
Right, so the first bulleted paragraph says foreign students wishing to attend school in the district must, for their first year of district enrollment, enroll through an exchange program, registered, etc. And then if you look at the first paragraph after the bulleted points, it seems to say the same thing.
Yeah, you're right. Thank you for that feedback. That second paragraph that's not highlighted, I would be removing that and making the bulleted highlighted clear that that goes with the exchange program / J-1 visa.
Great, that was the only comment I had.
Thank you, Phil. Yeah, and I do want to say thank you. Sanjay emailed me a couple of times over the weekend, and Fiona emailed me as well, just with, I think, Catherine, you might have emailed as well with some questions and some feedback on the typos. So thank you for that. Yes, I think what we have in front of us is the update. So I believe Debbie printed off the update and gave it to you. Okay, okay, okay. Okay. Oh, you're right. This is not revised in here.
I did receive an email from Debbie that did have the updates in it.
Is there anyone else that wants to make public comment on this item? At least there are reasons for that to fill out.
So first of all, thank you for getting to this matter relatively quickly. Just a reminder, I was an exchange student myself many years ago, and we were a family that was interested in hosting a student this past year. Now, the existing policy would have accepted working with Youth for Understanding, the organization that was that had matched us with the student, and was also encouraging of such activities. So the revision also would have allowed for us, pending the school administration being up for this. I think there's great to have discretion in this. So with all the revisions, it would have worked out as well. So from my point of view, if these revisions make the district feel more comfortable in resuming hosting exchange students, then that's great. I also think that the existing policy actually accommodates for it as well. It's more a matter of doing so. Same thing for encouraging our students to do exchanges abroad. I think that's great. Whether that needs to be in the policy or not, I don't know. From my personal experience, it was nothing like, oh, by doing the exchange, I had to forego, the excellent, I had to forego academic opportunities here. In fact, when I returned from my exchange program in Germany, I applied to different colleges. I got in everywhere. And I think actually having done the exchange probably helped. I went to Caltech, which has its own kind of unique culture. And I think there, some students struggled adapting, but I had already had the experience of going to a foreign place, adjusting. And so actually, I think it helped me thrive there too. So I just want to say thank you for working on this. And I hope it all results in eventually the district taking in exchange students, because I think it's very enriching for them and it'll be very enriching for us and for the host families. So thank you.
I want to just comment on or reinforce something that Lada said. I've compared the board's present policy with its proposed policy. And I've also compared the board's present policy, both the administrative policies and the board policies, with Palo Alto's policy. Palo Alto is a very similar district, also basic aid district. And Palo Alto has been accepting our students continuously for at least, 15, 20 years. There was no interruption in the exchange programs due to 9/11. The exchange programs continued to run. They were supported by the Department of State. We have special programs, excuse me, that we administer for the Department of State. That's the YES and the FLEX programs. So it's unclear to me why the board would want to revise its policies, because the policies allowed for accepting exchange students, and the exchange programs themselves also embody most of the additional verbiage that was put in primarily to the AR. So mostly my concern was that MVLA was accepting no exchange students, even though the policy stated acceptance of the concept and acceptance of the fact that organizations, students from organizations that meet those criteria should be admitted. So I think if MVLA board thinks it's important to add verbiage to its existing policies, it should have good reasons behind the specific verbiage. I don't see those as adding a lot of value currently as drafted. I will make my, excuse me, the documents I've prepared available to the board, the comparisons between Palo Alto and MVLA, those comparisons, basically there's no difference between the two board policies. It's two documents. They are word for word the same. One word is different in the AR, I believe. I'm sorry, in the board policy. And it just has to do with vaccinations. So I'll be following up with emails to the board. Yes.
So let me just clarify something. So, yeah, I understand what you're saying. From what I understand is that that's what I was able to find out in the conversation I had today. Is the clarification, the additional verbiage that was needed in the policy was more for our internal processes.
Sure.
So people can understand, like in the case of, you know, an F1 is not needed, it's a J1, it's the J1 process that we need to look at. So things like that that's needed to be kind of spelled out. So I think that's where a lot of the additional verbiage was just kind of wanting to make sure we clarify what is our process for our, you know, for internal for use, so people can go to that and understand what's the process, what are we accepting, what is our policy.
Sure.
So I mean, I understand what you're saying, but maybe on the outside it may look like, hey, why are we doing this? I think that's kind of one of the main reasons for kind of re-looking at the wording that we had in our policy, especially on the AR side.
Fair enough.
But in essence, from what I also understand, and Terry, correct me if I'm wrong, is that, you know, I think it just, you know, for like organizations like yours would be, you know, the students coming from your organization would be accepted, you know, based on this policy, as it would have been on the previous policy as well. But this kind of just also stipulates that it will be nothing, it won't change for that.
Okay. So I did have a couple of recommendations of verbiage that I think will be problematic for the organizations that meet all the criteria. And I will highlight those in my remarks as well to the board in writing. Thank you.
Thanks.
I have one clarifying question. Do you know the reason why there weren't any students at MVLA? Was it because they didn't apply?
No.
Or were they all rejected?
They were all rejected. And staff had said that they do not accept students from organizations like ours. And there was some talk earlier on, about 3 years ago, that the only organization that they would work with was Rotary, which seems odd. Then there was also the reason given that they would only work with nonprofits, which is also a little bogus because we're all nonprofits. So something was amiss, and that's why I came to the board.
Thank you for that.
Okay.
Does the board have any other questions for? So now we will move on to the next one, which is the school calendar, and I will ask Dr. Meyer to lead us through that.
All right, thank you. 17.3 is a staff recommendation for a calendar adjustment for the spring of 2022. First of all, in order to meet our goals of both academic excellence and safety for our students and staff, And also to work very hard to continue to keep our students on campus in our educational programs. We are recommending that the Monday upon return of winter break, February 28th, be a day that is dedicated to professional development for our teachers, and also that we look to those days during winter break, Thursday the 24th and Friday the 25th of February, as well as Monday the 28th for students and staff to take advantage of testing prior to return. So one thing that we noticed during this last wave, January 3rd, that Monday that we had for professional development and students were home, was a wonderful way so we could come in, we could plan, we could prepare. Our team got together and spent over half the day getting ready for the implementation of the antigen tests. One of the things that came up during that discussion is, boy, what would we have done without this buffer day? But maybe we need another day. And any kind of tweaking to the calendar, we realized needed some lead time for our families and students. So with this, we would be recommending that change, and students would be returning to campus on March 1st, 2022. Exactly.
So we're saying on the 24th and 25th, and we would still have our testing on our site, right?
Yes, part of our COVID designee team will be here on, and it will only be at the district office, one site. We will have someone coming in on those 2 days to help supervise the testing on that Thursday and Friday. And then we're working to procure antigen. We're not necessarily ready to promise it because of supply, but we would like also, if we are able, we would like to have other possible tests available.
So we would hopefully hand out the test prior to them coming, prior to them leaving, and then ask for them to take the test on the 28th, not, or whenever they needed to,
But within, 2 to 3 days before returning, yes.
so all of this would be in some kind of a letter, or we would kind of put out the guidelines of when the test is available here and why we're doing it.
Yes, recognizing that even, daily it changes, but that is the plan to increase safety. And we've also had quite a few requests from our teachers that need that time to be together and plan and work in teams to have professional development.
And then the teachers would also be testing probably on the 28th as well, or we can provide access to them on the days as well.
Yes. We had 1 day, so we're not certain about April because this would be the 1 day that we have. We're at 181. Mm-hmm.
Was our last day of school because we need the instructional days required. So, if that's not the case, we should have been 7. We should be able to get 7.
So my understanding is that we are now at 181. So I can certainly double check that. I do know that with much of the things that are changing during COVID, that there's more flexibility surrounding those minutes, but I can certainly get that information. Yeah.
I've heard a lot of, I've heard complaints from parents saying that, basically we were really limited in the summer.
Mm-hmm.
To kind of just, to basically kind of be away from school, kind of decompress.
Mm-hmm.
We really, really shortened that time now.
Mm-hmm.
And there's no reason we could have added an extra day if we didn't need to. And I think that's so
Absolutely, will.
Preferably, I'd rather keep the 28th and end on June 7th. I'd rather, let people have a longer summer break.
Okay.
But back to the whole thing of what occurred when they came back to school.
I understand, but I still prefer to have a longer, every day we can have a celebration would be better than that. I think the time summer is just too short. I think so.
I would like to say that in general, school districts often put in an extra day or two, I mean, back in the Midwest, snow days, it's otherwise contingency days and so on, sometimes, so that if something does come up, you aren't sure, and in this case, it should be one thing that this could apply, because COVID is a contingency that needs to be addressed.
I know Riley wants to.
Riley has some.
I was just curious when we started at, like in August.
It's the 11th again. That's the
That's
draft.
like, I guess, 2 months.
Oh, is that, wait, maybe it's not, I don't.
It's,
Yeah.
no, it hasn't come before the board yet.
Yeah, sorry, it might not.
It's
The 11th this year.
likely to be the same.
Catherine, to your point of districts off and adding in buffering days, I'm recalling the same conversation that Sanjay's recalling, just because we were so tight and we were really trying to figure out the minutes. But I'm also hearing Dr. Meyer say they counted and you're at 181. So at any rate,
I just remember being really tight. We're slated, we haven't approved the calendar, it was slated to return on the 10th of August next year.
Okay.
So, is there additional comments from the board? And then I would take public comments also, if there any. Bill, do you have anything to say about this? No? Okay, is there anyone in the public that would like to comment on this school calendar change? Okay, none, so this is an item for info/action, so is there anyone that would like to make a motion regarding this school change?
Yeah, I would think much better, I guess, is it, pending, I mean, are you guys sure that we have 181 days on good to go, or will we make
a motion pending the 181 days or what do you?
I'd
how would you
prefer a
like to do it?
motion to approve, but,
Okay.
so we can get the information out, but we can certainly get that
Okay.
double checked tomorrow, but I know we
Yeah.
had looked and counted,
Okay.
and 181 was the number that was given.
Okay, and I hear your concern, Sanjay, about June, but given the circumstances, I'm gonna go the other way and make a motion and see if it flies. I move that we approve the proposed calendar change to have.
Is there a second? Fiona, Lou? Second, this motion. Is there any further discussion before the vote? No. Paula, how do you vote? Riley? Katie Moore? All those in favor say aye.
Aye.
And that motion carries 4-1. And the two board members are approved. Okay, we're going to the end now. Board operations, review of the calendar of them. Any members of the board or superintendent? That are already. Right. Communications correspondence? Yeah. Oh my God. Do we have enough
Want to hand it? Maybe I'll use
I
it.
do have enough.
Yes. Okay, good. So what you have before you is something that we should all be grateful for. The MVLA High School Foundation publishes every year this college and counseling handbook. And while for some of you, you may have already chosen your school, this has fantastic timelines, information about universities and colleges, and is just a wonderful resource. So they have made these available. They are in counseling offices, and just wanted each of the board members to have a copy so you can see the great work that they are doing.
So excited. And anyway, it's an amazing document. I'm really grateful.
It really is. Thank you.
I know. Different. The two handbooks were different.
Uh-huh.
And this is what we wanted. And I also want to thank the MVLA High School Foundation. Funded
Yes.
valuable. Do you have any other correspondence?
No, that is it.
Does the board have any correspondence they want to share? No? All right. Thank you, everyone. Oh, you do? All right.
The South Francisco School Board has actually
Oh, interesting.
I'm not aware of any other district filing any kind of request like that. And I don't know whether it's policy or not, and I don't know that, frankly, I don't think there are districts that could be in a position to see that they're making
Will you repeat that?
they're asking me some.
Which one?
South.
Oh, no.
Yeah, and it's based on it.
Next would be the legislative update. And gosh, we have a legislative update now.
At the beginning of the year, the legislature comes together and gives us some new information. So what you have before you are some of the new rules and protocols and some things that were enacted January 1st. And so these were things that have now been put into law. And so the first, Senate Bill 14, students shall be excused from school when the absence is for the benefit of the student's mental or behavioral health. This has been a long time coming, and previously mental health days or time away with this absence code had not been accepted, and now they are. So that's good news. The next Assembly Bill 516, students shall be excused from school for the purpose of participating in a cultural ceremony or event. And oftentimes different cultures were missed in this type of action. So that is also an excused category. Assembly Bill 27, districts must post on their website information about their homeless liaison and the related information for homeless youth. So this is something that became effective in September, and so it's definitely something, a reaction to COVID, that's very necessary. And then Senate Bill 400, this is a requirement for the district to have a housing questionnaire. Oftentimes it's hard to find information on our homeless youth, and it's something that it looks like they're going to amp up support of trying to track this. So that is good news. And also it's connected to resources. And then lastly, Assembly Bill 132. This was part of the trailer bill, and the county offices of ed and charter schools must ensure students complete the FAFSA form for federal student aid, complete a
to inform if they want to participate in a California doing that, or an opt-out. So we're still reviewing this because this could be very cumbersome for our district. This isn't necessarily great news because, but we do have many students who benefit from the FAFSA, and it's an important thing to do. But if we have to opt out for everyone who we know is already not going to meet the requirements, which is the majority of our students, it could be something that may take effect. So I wanted to bring that to your attention as well. So that concludes my legislative update. Thank you, Dr. Myers. I will say that that's one joy I've had ever since Dr. Myers. You know, it's just legislative updates because there's legislation to think about. And I think it's very interesting to us, and all the legislation that does is actually that is not. Some of it is some of it is specifically budget. All important information for board to know the second. All right. Any questions on the legislation? Board suggestions for future board meetings? Any questions? Okay. The date and time of the next meeting is the open part of the meeting will be on February 24th here. And then the rest of the board meetings for the year are also listed in the shipping agenda. We don't need to read the full section. So I would let us have a motion to adjourn. Thank you for finishing. What do you think? Okay, Riley? Okay. Board, all in favor? Aye. Any opposed? Is adjourned at 08.